23, verse 7, that Jesus says these words, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often have I longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing." It's interesting language because Jesus is using a motherly metaphor, this idea of a mother hen gathering her chicks to herself. And as we were preparing for this, one of the key concepts we want you to understand is not that God is a feminine God, not that God is like our mother, but our mothers are like God. That it's easy for God to portray these attributes because we understand little glimpses of who He is based upon the things that our moms have taught us over the years. These are not formal lessons. These are not sitting down and going through a notebook. But these are moments in our lives where we have simply observed our moms, watched them in different situations, how they would respond, and we've learned something about God's character. And so this morning we want to talk to you, share a brief message with you called Things My Mother Taught Me About God. So Pastor Steve, why don't you start us off?
Sure thing. I mentioned to you earlier that my mom is somewhat fearful of snakes, frogs, mice, heights, bees, ... She's afraid of a lot of things. But I think the thing that my mom taught me was to fear the Lord and what proper fear of the Lord is. See, in our home, if ever there was a disagreement, if ever there was something that would arise between my brother, myself, my brother, my mom, my dad, my mom, all of those sort of things, my mom would have a tagline that she would say. She would say, "Stephen, there's going to be a fight, and I'm going to win." She would say this to me, even to the point when Jessica and I were dating in Montreal, so I was like 22 years old, she would say, "Stephen, we love Jessica. Our family loves Jessica, and if you mess things up, there's going to be a fight, and I'm going to win." So, Jess, you really didn't have a choice in this, by the way. It was really her hasta la vista moment. It was her Arnold Schwarzenegger line that finished all arguments. There was nothing to say after that. I'm not going to fight back with my mom. Once that line popped out, I'm like, "Mom, I'm totally done. You win." I wasn't going to mess with her. See, it was in those moments she taught me what proper fear was. I was afraid of my mom. I wasn't afraid that she was going to beat me, she was going to hit me, but I was afraid that I was going to lose her respect. See, she taught me in those moments what fear of God is. She showed me in a few different principles, and if it's all right, I'm going to kind of unpack these a little bit. See, my mom showed fear of the Lord, but the fear of the Lord wasn't anxiety. It wasn't me being anxious about what's going to happen in my life. It wasn't those moments. I can remember when my mom had cancer, and there was this peace that came over the whole situation. I can remember as she was being wheeled away to her operation, what does she do? She looks at me and just gives me the thumbs up. She said, "Steve," her and my dad both, "Steve, we have so much peace in this situation. We're good. God's got us looked after." It says in Proverbs 31:25, "His strength and dignity are her clothing. She laughs at the time to come." She was not afraid of the future in those moments, but she was prepped because she knew that her relationship with God was all right. She showed me what the fear of the Lord was. See, our anxieties reveal what we think about God. Are we fearful or do we fear Him? A mom who fears the Lord is strong. My mom's fear was in the Lord, but she was strong. She knew what was going on through this journey that we're walking through right now. You know what? My mom is strong. My mom is strong because she fears the Lord.
That's good.
So that's good.
That's good. That's really good. And Pastor Adam, speaking of the fear of a mom, I'd be careful with what story you share next.
I've had to edit it as I've been sitting up here. But my mom taught me about the God being a giver. He's a giving God. And my mom loves to shop. Let's just get that out there. She loves to shop. That's usually what she does pretty much every day. That's how she passes her time. But from a young age, she enjoyed going to the malls. But one thing I've noticed with my mom is that she was always the one who would call and say, hey, I'm just in this store, and I see this. Would you like this? Do you want this? From me, my brother, or my sister. And she would always make sure, hey, I want to get you this. And, oh, you don't have to. No, but I want to. And there's always a sense of, I want to give you this. I want you to have this. And there's always been that giving of material goods, that always wanted to help out. But it doesn't just stop at material goods, but it also comes out in her time. As she gives of her time. Right now, we're pretty blessed to have her down the street, sort of, from my house. Maybe my wife doesn't agree all the time. I'm just joking. Don't throw my wife under the bus. Shoot. But she watches our kids on a regular basis, and we're pretty blessed to have my mom close by to watch them, and they get to spend time and laugh with her and experience what I got to experience as a kid. And so she gives of her time. But it's not just now, and it's not just towards me, but towards other people. I always saw her as someone who gave of her time, gave of her ear to people to talk to and spent time with them and would go out with people. And I know, I grew up watching her babysit, and she babysat kids in our home, outside of her home. And she didn't just see them as kids that she took care of, but she saw them as her own. And even today, she goes back on a regular basis to spend time with the one family that she spent years watching them since they were out of the hospital. And she gives of her time, she gives of her love, she gives of who she is to them. When I was younger, my grandmother had cancer, and I saw my mom give of her time every day. She'd go to work, but then after work, she'd go right there and spend time with my grandmother and spend time. And then after my grandmother passed away, I saw her give of her time to my grandfather and her love to her father and just spending time. And she gave of herself. And as I see God as a giving God. And you look through all through Scripture, and it talks about how God gives this, and God gives peace, and God gives joy, and God gave His Son. God gives so often in Scripture. We see Him as a God who gives to His people. And Scripture that I have this morning is Romans 8:32. He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also, along with Him, graciously give us all things? My mom taught me that God is someone who gives all of Himself to us. He doesn't just say, okay, you can only have this part of me, but He opens up Himself fully to us and says, look, you're my child, and I want to give you every part of my life to you. I want you to enjoy the life that you have, and so I'm going to give you what you need. I'm going to give you things that you didn't expect. I'm going to give you life, and life more abundantly. God is a giving God, and I'm thankful that my mom taught me about God being a giving God.
That's good. It's very, very good. The generous God. You may not believe it, but I was incredibly good at cleaning when I was a kid. Cleaning the inside of the fridge, and I don't know how. Milk in the fridge one day, and the next day they're all gone. I mean, just constant food going out of our fridge. And I remember being probably my junior high years and going to the fridge in our kitchen for a snack, hungry once again. And when I opened the fridge, I was pretty perplexed because there wasn't a whole lot of food in the fridge. I saw a few apples that had come from my grandma's tree. I saw a loaf of bread, which was a staple in our house, and maybe a couple of cucumbers from her garden, a jug of water. And I don't remember much other than that. Maybe relish, ketchup, just some of the condiments. And as I stood there in the fridge, I was overwhelmed. I began to calculate the food that we had and the number of days that we had left until my mom would get her next check. My mom would get her check at the end of each month. It was a mother's benefit check. I was trying to think about how much it was this morning. It was somewhere around the range of $600 and $650 for a mother with two kids. I think our rent was about $200 and some odd dollars, and so she had to stretch about $100 a week with everything for our family. And as I'm standing in the fridge, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that this amount of food is going to last us through the rest of the week. I was a little angry. I was angry that we didn't have more. I was upset because I was hungry and there was nothing but the apples from my grandma's tree. And I didn't know what else to do but to call my mom and let her see the situation. And I remember calling my mom into the kitchen, and she stared into the fridge and saw what I saw. I could see the disappointment on her face, not a disappointment in me, not a disappointment in the items in our fridge. But I know my mom, like Adam just shared about that generous spirit. She's very generous. And I know that she was disappointed that she didn't have a full fridge to give her 2 kids. I knew that she would always try to give us the best, and she stood there, and I could see the tears begin to fill her eyes, not really sure what to do. And then I heard those words, I'm not sure what to do, Jeff. I didn't really think that was acceptable as a kid. You know, you're pretty insensitive when you're a kid. You don't have all the wherewithal to rationalize that she doesn't know what to do. And in that moment, I just stood and watched what she would do. And she, with tears in her eyes, she said these words, I just believe God's going to take care of us. I just believe that. I got to tell you, in all honesty, I felt like that was a crossing the fingers. That was a roll of the dice and hoping for a lucky 7. I didn't really understand, compute, that faith was a real thing. I felt like it was luck. Yeah, let's just close our eyes and just hope that food's going to... Mom, what do you expect? Like the food's just going to grow in the fridge? And then she called my sister and she called me and she said, let's just pray. I just believe that Jesus is going to look after us. And so she took my sister and I, and I'm being honest, I didn't have a whole lot of faith. I was relying on her. I'll pray, but I don't have a lot of faith that this is going to turn around. And she prayed a very simple prayer that God would look after our family. Short while later, there was a buzz at our apartment buzzer, and I thought it was one of my buddies wanting me to play manhunt or hide and seek or go bike riding. I talked about that last week. I thought it was one of my friends, and when I answered the buzzer, it was the voice of a lady in our church. It was a lady who had run our Crusader program, Julie. Julie had never been to our apartment before. She had never visited us before. She may have picked us up once or twice, but this was a rare occasion that she would come by, and I just didn't understand it. And Julie said, can I come up? Well, we were hospitable people, so we let her up. And there was a lot of curiosity in our mind at that moment as to why this lady was appearing, why she was coming to visit us. As my mom opened the door, I was kind of just behind her just to see what was going on. And there was Julie with a full basket of groceries. It was the first basket. She went down and got another basket, and I believe there's one more. And she said these words. She said, I just felt that God wanted me to bless you guys with some food. I don't know what you're going through, but I just felt that God wanted me to bless you with some food. And as I was a little kid, I began to look through the baskets. And it wasn't just the staples, the milk and the bread. I mean, she brought chocolate. I mean, it's cookies. I mean, it's the stuff that kids, that's the stuff I think that we want to survive with when you're a kid. She took care of us. She didn't take care of us. God took care of us. And I learned from my mom that God is a provisional God, that He always takes care of His kids. As I was preparing that thought, I was reminded of a story I read recently, a few weeks ago in my devotions, Exodus 16, and you'll see it up on the screen. It says, the whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. I mean, this is me. This is me grumbling with my mom. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Translation, the fridge is empty. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will to have enough per day so that they would never forget that He is their provision. He's their provision. And friends, I don't know what you're going through today, but one thing that my mom taught me is that we serve Jehovah Jireh. He is a God who provides. And when you look in your fridge, when you look in your bank account, when you looking for a job like Pastor Adam read this morning, and you don't think there's going to be provisions, watch out, because a few moments later there's going to be someone at your buzzer with a basket full of manna. He's a God who provides. Now, Pastor Steve, you were talking about your mom teaching you about the fear of God, but there's a second part to that characteristic, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the flip side of things. You see, my mom, she really is, she's a social butterfly. She loves to be out in public. She loves to be the life of the party. You know, she probably doesn't see this in herself, and we've had this conversation before, but my mom is always the first one out there, the first one out in the foyer, the first one to see people, the first one to say, hey, how's it going? That's my mom. My mom, if she plays games, she gets loud, and I was going to say obnoxious, but I won't say that one. She gets loud, period. Sorry, Mom. But she's the life of the party. And she sometimes surprises us with the things that she does. I can remember going to play paintball with my mom. Yeah, just that. If you knew my mom, these would be way more funny.
Did you lose?
Oh, did I lose? So what happened was we went out with our church. We went out with the board members and pastoral staff. It's a really good way if you need to get rid of stress or anything, Pastor Jeff. You can take some of your board members out and shoot them. So
you got
Amen.
that, Richard?
Amen.
We'll set that up for you.
Sandy's going to want to come too.
Goes both ways. Wow. But my mom was completely ruthless when she played. You know, people would be saying, mercy, 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 but with their hands up, and she'd shoot them. She was just ruthless. She was the one going down the field, flanking down the field, taking the flags, running back. She surprised every one of us. As I said, she's a social butterfly. She was the one that would be the first person out in the foyer at the church, the first person to call someone when they'd be down, the first person to give a hug, but she would also be that person that when a tough conversation needs to be had, she would have that conversation with the person in love and in mercy. I believe that this is kind of the flip side of fearing God, the reverse of what we said earlier, is that my mom was one who feared the Lord and spoke wisdom and kindness. It says in Proverbs 31:26, she opens up her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness are on her tongue. See, not only did my mom speak wisdom and kindness and have those hard conversations, she was a mom that was for us, the one that would cheer us on. You know, if we were playing sports, if we were in a band, she would be our biggest fan. She was completely for us. In ministry, let me tell you, my mom talks way too much about what me and my brother and my families do in ministry. She talks constantly. If I talk to one of her friends, they say, oh, we hear that you're up to this. I'm like, really? You know that about what's going on at my church? That's awesome. But my mom is my biggest fan. She is for me. She cheers me on. And that's one thing that I've learned from my mom is that I need to be for people. I need to be the one who cheers people on, just as Jesus Christ is for me. He's not against me, but he is completely for me. He is in my corner, and he cheers me on. So that's something else I've learned from my mom.
That's so good. It's good. Pastor Adam.
I guess to tag on to what I was sharing before about how my mom is a giving person, I guess the motivation is that she cares. The reason why she gives is because she cares about people. She cares about what's going on in people's lives, and she's not a social butterfly. She'd be quite the opposite, I think. And so she enjoys, kind of just doing her own thing. She loves her family. She loves her kids. She loves her grandkids. She loves her sisters. And I think one of the things that stuck out to me so often was so many times growing up, I'd answer the phone. It'd be one of my aunts, and they'd say, is your mother there? And I'd say, sure. And so I'd give the phone to my mom, and she'd spend hours talking with one of her sisters. And then a day later, another one of her sisters would call, and I could always hear the conversation. It wasn't always happy moments. There wasn't always good conversations. Some of them were frustrating conversations. Some of them were sad conversations. And most of the time, it was my mom listening to what her sisters were saying, what they were sharing, and them unloading just what was going on in their situation, in their life. And I began to see my mom willing to give of her time once again to her sisters in these moments. I know even today, she pretty much every Tuesday, if you want to figure out where she is, she's out with one of her sisters who lives here in Ottawa. She just spends hours with her in a restaurant, just hanging out and talking, spending time together. And that's what she does. She enjoys, people like her family, and she cares about them, and that's why she gives of herself to them, because she's motivated by her care for them. And I see that in God. I see, that God is a caring God. He's not distant. He's not far off from our situation, but the Bible tells us that he cares about us. It actually says in 1 Peter 5:7, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. Mm-hmm. That God says, hey, you can come to me because I care about you. You can approach me. You can come into my presence because I care about you. It doesn't matter what you want to talk about. It doesn't matter what you want to say. He cares about us. He says, that's why my motivation is that I care for you. So come and please share. And I saw that with my mom. I saw how she cared about family. She cared about people that I cared about. If I told her a story about a friend or somebody that I knew that was going through something, she showed her care for them in the words that she said to me. And she would allow people to come and share their feelings and babysitting kids and spending time with her parents. It was all motivated through the care that she has for people. And she really showed me that God is a caring God, and that no situation is too small or too big for us to go to her. And I know now my brother, my sister, and I, and even my wife, we can go to my mom, and we know that she's going to spend some time listening to us because she cares about us. And it's really cool to see that characteristic of God in my mom's life, that she's a caring person.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I think, go ahead. I think that's one of the primary things we learn from our moms about God, is how caring he is. I think God reflects his care for us just in a snapshot of our moms. And the selflessness, the sacrifices that they do show in those caring moments, it's just a snapshot of how much God loves us. I was standing there during worship, and I said, God, I'm frustrated because I can't fully fathom how much you love me. I don't know if you ever think about that, but we can't fully get how much he cares for us. We really can't, but he does. He cares for us greatly. I'm positive I've shared this story, and so for those of you who've heard it, please forgive me, but there's a point in this story that's so powerful that I haven't shared. I've told you, my mom and myself and my sister, we used to have all kinds of wrestling matches, pillow fights, foot through the door. There's one day my mom and I are wrestling, and she comes into my room and she kicks me in the leg, or she goes to kick me, not child abuse, we don't need to call CAS, but she goes to kick me, and I stick up my knee, and she broke her toe. We went to the hospital for the rest of that wrestling match. It was a bad moment. But in these moments, because we lived on the second floor of an apartment building, we were loud. I mean, we would stomping through the halls. We were running around the dining room set. I mean, we were constantly doing this, and people from downstairs would keep coming up. Like every now and then, they'd knock on our door. Hey, can you please keep it down? Sounds like a herd of elephants. So we were confronted many times by people based upon our loudness. But only once was it by cops. We were living in Oshawa, and we had moved into a semi-detached home that my grandma had purchased, and so it was a summer night, and I was dating Ainsley. We may have even been engaged, and Ainsley and I are sitting in the front living room. And my mom didn't have the air conditioner on. She had all the windows open, thought she'd have this nice, cool summer breeze come through. And I don't even know what started it, but my mom started to egg on my sister, and then my sister started to egg on my mom, and back and forth, and the next thing I knew, the two of them are in this wrestling match, and my mom is trying to push my sister into the shower, and so I can hear this. The water is running, and she's trying to throw her into the shower. A couple moments later, my sister's running down the stairs, and a bucket of water goes flying down the stairs. You got to picture this. Here's the upstairs, there's a staircase, and then it comes down again. There's a picture right on the wall. Bucket of water misses my sister, hits the oil painting on the wall, bounces off the wall, and starts pouring down the stairs. The shower's running. My mom's trying to get my sister into the shower when she can. There's water all over the stair. It's like dripping down the staircase. And the next couple moments, my sister is back in the bathroom. She's thrown water at my mom. The two of them are soaking. The carpet's drenched. Water pouring down the stairs. And all I can hear is, "Don't, Mom, don't." And I can't remember what my mom's response was, but I remember Ainsley's response. "Jeff, they need to be quiet or the cops are going to come." And I said, no, Ainsley, it's fine. Like, this happens all the time. This is, this is like peanut butter and jam in our house. You just get into these wrestling matches, and people aren't gonna. They know us better. Well, the water's pouring everywhere. There's constant screaming, and all of a sudden, the doorbell rings, and I go, and sure enough, the police are there. Well, this wasn't my doing, so I'm not going to talk to them. I just, "Hold on, sir. Mom," you got to picture this. My mom comes down the stairs with a bucket in her hand, dripping water. She is laughing like a little kid. She's face to face with two officers, and she's like, "Oh, hi, officers. What seems to be the problem?" Seems to be the problem. The officers have this little grin on their face, and they said, "Ma'am, we have received some reports that there's some screaming, that some girl is screaming, 'Don't, Mom.'" Well, then my sister comes down the stairs, and she's dripping wet, and my mom's like, "Oh, officers, nothing to worry about. Me and my daughter are just having a water fight inside." I'm thinking, get the paddy wagon right now. Take them both away. Soaking wet. And my mom's just got this big, like honestly, she doesn't even think that there's a problem. She just sees my sister and she starts giggling about how wet she is. And the water all around her, and the officers are like, "Okay, ma'am, could you just keep it down a little bit so that the neighbors don't wonder what's going on?" And she's like, "Sure," and she's a big smile on her face, and the officers leave, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm definitely adopted. This is crazy. My mom continued to have the water fight with my sister, just told them to keep it down a bit. And in that moment, I thought to myself, as I watched her with the police officer, she didn't really care about her reputation in that moment. She didn't care what other people thought, not even the officers. All she cared about was that she was delighting in my sister. She just found delight in being with my sister, having fun. I love that about my mom, is that she found delight in me and my sister. It was her priority. It was above reputation. She didn't care that the carpet was wet. She didn't care that the officers were at the door. She didn't care what the neighbors thought. She found delight in us. And Psalm 149:4 says, "The Lord delights in his people." My mom taught me that God delights in us. He delights in his kids. Friends, I don't know what your perspective on God is. meet his parents, to get his parents, or his parents were picking him up. And so it was great when Rick and Janice got out of the car. They hadn't seen Clark for quite a few months. And I just saw his mother's face smile. It lit right up. She was delighted, not because Clark had a gift for her, not because he did anything for her. She just was happy he was there. Oh, that's powerful. You don't have to do anything to bring delight to God. You don't need to be anything to bring delight to God. You just need to crawl up in his lap. He delights in you. And friends, I want to encourage you that as you think about your mom this day, that you would think about those attributes of your mom that reflect the personality of God. 2 Timothy 1 verse 5 says, I am reminded of your sincere faith. He's talking to Timothy. This is Paul talking to Timothy. He says, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Faith in Lois, grandma. She passes it down to Eunice, mom. And now what Timothy sees in mom Eunice is now in him. And regardless if your mom was good or bad, a person of faith or not a person of faith, I'm convinced that there are elements of our faith that come because we have watched our moms. We've seen the caring, we've seen the fear, we've seen the consideration, we've seen the generosity, we've seen the provision, we've seen the delight. And our faith is established by the things that our moms have shown us, regardless of where they've been at. I had someone come to me during the worship, and she had a word, and the word was, the gist of it was that there are many moms in here who feel like a failure. Maybe your kids aren't serving God, and you wonder, what could I have done differently? Maybe you know what you could have done differently. The word was that we need to lay down our failures. And just this idea that there are so many things, like a tapestry of things that we've laid out in our lives. And as she was sharing the word, I thought, yeah, that's what needs to be said at the end of this little message, is that those of you who might feel like you failed, you don't know how many moments you've reflected God to your kids. You don't. None of us as parents ever feel like we measure up. And many times we get bound by guilt, bound and overcome by the things we didn't do, or we wish we could have done differently. My mom didn't know that she showed me the delight of the Father when she had a bucket in her hand and the officers at the door. Steve's mom didn't know the principles that she was teaching him when she had a paintball gun in her hand. And when Phyllis was acting like Tarzan, she had no idea what she was teaching Pastor Adam. None of you moms fully understand the impact that you have on your kids. And I want you to forget about your failures. And I want you to recognize that you have laid things for your kids that are unbelievable. And that regardless of where your kids are at, they will remember those godly traits. I'm thankful for my mom today. I'm not with her, but I'm thankful that she showed me something of the character of God. And moms, we want to commend you for doing such a good job. Not always just in the intentional moments, but often by the things that are just part of what you do on a daily basis. You reflect the character of God, and we thank you for that. Gentlemen, can we applaud our moms today? I'm going to ask that one of our ushers would just tell Pastor Jordan that we're about ready to go. They're going to prepare the kids. I'm going to ask that our board members and our pastors would just come to the front. We want to, in just a moment, call the mothers forward, but we have a small gift for you. It's actually smaller than I thought it was going to be, but it's a pocket journal. And it has our logo on it, but it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." And I've made knowledge and Holy One in capital letters on this for a reason. is that, moms, we want you to keep learning about God. None of us have ever figured him out. We want you to keep learning, and I'm encouraging you to use this journal in your quiet times, and that you would simply write down the things that you're learning about God. Because the more you learn about God, the more you can reflect God to your kids. Not just to your kids, maybe some of your kids have grown up and they're no longer in the home, but you can reflect God to the people in this place. I often will watch people from a distance, and I see people who are not the mother of a certain person in the church, but they sure show motherly characteristics. I see it all the time. I see kindness. I see gentle words. I see giving. I see people coming alongside. I've watched it in the 4 years I've been here. I've watched incredible moments, ladies, where you've been mothers to other people. And I pray that you'll just keep reflecting the things that you're learning about God to the people in this congregation and the people in this world. I'm going to invite the moms to come right now. Just before you do, let me just say this. We only have enough for the moms here. I know sometimes on Mother's Day we have, well, can I get one for my Aunt Sally and for Sister Jane? And I got a friend in Nantucket, and no, we only have enough for the people here. And so we're inviting just the moms to come, and if you would just grab one. And then I'm going to ask that you just stand at the front while you come up. But moms, would you come right now?